Welcome again, dear students. I'm Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor in the Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University. In the last lecture, we discussed the protected area network, and in this lecture, we will continue to discuss the protected area network with some additions. Although in the last lecture we discussed the protected area network of the world, and we also discussed the protected area network of the India, and we discussed national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, and the protected areas, and community reserves in context of Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. In this particular lecture, we will discuss the site of conservation importance. Let's start from Biosphere Reserve. Biosphere reserves are actually sites established by countries and recognized by UNESCO under the main and biosphere programs to promote actually sustainable development based on local community efforts and sound science. The program of main and biosphere reserve was actually initiated by UNESCO in 1971. The main purpose of the formation of biosphere reserve is to conserve in situ forms of life along with its support systems in its totality, so that it could serve as a referral system for monitoring and evaluating changes in the natural ecosystem. The first biosphere reserve of the world was established in 1979. Since then, the network of biosphere reserves has increased to 631 in 119 countries across the world. Presently, if we talk about India, we have 18 notified biosphere reserves. The biosphere reserves are actually divided into zones. There are 3 different zones, that is core, buffer, and manipulation zone, or we also call them as transition zones. Let's discuss these zones one by one. The first is core zone. This is a legally protected area where actually human interventions are totally prohibited. It is the innermost part of a biosphere reserves, and it is an undisturbed ecosystem. The formation from these areas actually helps to assess the sustainability of the activities, or we can say maintenance of the environment quality in the surrounding areas. Another zone is buffer zone. These are actually surrounded the core zone. The area actually surrounded the core zone is, we call them as a buffer zone. Here only the research and education activities are permitted to humans. These activities should not abstract the conservation objectives of the actually core areas. These areas also includes activities that actually helps to manage natural vegetation, agricultural land, fisheries, or forests to enhance the quality of the production. This zone might also include recreation and tourism facilities or tourism activities. Human activities are less intensive in this zone as compared to the transition zone, or we can say manipulation zone. Then we have a transition zone or manipulation zone. It is the peripheral area of the biosphere reserves where humans activities like cropping, settlements are permitted with the cooperation of the reserve management and local people. Through these activities, the degraded areas is resumed to its natural state. The local communities, scientists, conservation agencies, cultural groups, and other stakeholders work in this zone to use the area in a sustainable way for the welfare of human living there. Then another site of conservation importance is Project Tiger or Tiger Reserves. Actually, Government of India has launched the Project Tiger 1973 to curb the declining population of tigers in India. Today, India has 55 tiger reserves, which have not only helped stabilize tiger numbers but also brought attention to the conservation of entire ecosystems. Tiger reserves are monitored closely using advanced techniques like camera trapping and radio collarings. We will discuss the tiger reserves or the project tigers in detail in the coming lectures, and we will find out how this project was first initiated and what are the current status of the tiger reserves and what are the different activities that Government of India has launched to protect our national animal. Then another site of conservation importance is elephant reserves. Actually, elephant or project elephant was launched by Government of India in the year 1992 as a centrally sponsored schemes with the following objectives: to protect elephants, their habitats and corridors, the first main objective. Another objective is to address the issues of man and animal conflict, or we can say man elephant conflicts. Another is welfare of the captive elephants. This is the three main objectives or aims of the project elephants. And it was intended to provide the financial and technical support to the elephant range states of the India for the protection of the elephants, their habitats and corridors, and address the issues of human animal conflict or human elephant conflict. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change provide the financial and technical support to the major elephant range states of the country through Project Elephant. It is the elephant is included in Schedule 1st of Indian Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which was amended recently in 2023, and it is also find its place in Appendix 1st of Convention of International Trade of Endangered Species because of their high trade. It is found in 16 states of the India, and if we talk about how many elephant reserves are there in India, there are about 33 elephant reserves in our country. Then another site of we can say conservation importance is Ramsar wetlands. So let's discuss something about these Ramsar wetlands or Ramsar Convention. This Ramsar Convention is an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable utilization of wetlands, recognizing the fundamental ecological functions of the wetlands and their economic, cultural, scientific and recreational values. There are about 85 Ramsar sites in India, and managing wetlands is a global challenge, we can say, and the conventions presently counts 172 countries as its contracting parties, which actually recognize the value of having one international treaty dedicated to a single ecosystem. Wetlands are very important for the human survivals. That's why there is a convention on the wetland, or we can say there is a convention or wetland Ramsar conventions. They are among, we can say, the world most productive environments, cradle of biodiversity that provides the water and productivity among which countless species of plants and animals depends for their survival. Wetlands are also vital for the countless benefits or ecosystem services that they provide humanity, ranging from freshwater supply, food and building materials, biodiversity to flood control, groundwater recharge, and climate change mitigations. The convention use a broad definition. What is actually the definition of the wetlands according to the Ramsar conventions? It has given a very broad definition of the wetlands. The wetlands includes all lakes and rivers, underground aquifers, swamps, marshes, wet grasslands, peatlands, oases, estuaries, deltas, tidal flats, mangroves and other coastal areas, coral reefs and all human-made sites such as fish pond, rice paddies, reservoirs and salt pans. There are how we can recognize a particular wetland as a wetland of international importance, and this convention has given a criteria, a 9 criteria to declare a particular wetlands of international importance. Let's discuss these things, these 9 criteria one by one. And the first criteria is a site containing representative of rare or unique wetland types. This is criteria 1. A wetland actually should be considered as a wetland of international importance if it contains a representative of rare or unique example of a natural or near natural wetland types found within the appropriate biogeographical regions. This is the first criteria to declare a particular wetland of international importance. And another criteria is the site of international importance for conserving biological diversity. And there are 2, 3 and 4, 3 criteria falls under this. The first is the wetlands should be considered as a wetland of international importance actually if it supports vulnerable, endangered or critically endangered species or threatened ecological communities. Another criteria 3 is a wetland should be considered internationally important if it supports population of plants and animal species that is actually important for maintaining the biological diversity of a particular biogeographical regions. This is the third criteria. And the fourth is a wetland should be considered as a wetland of international importance if it supports plant or animal species at a critical stage in their life cycles or provides refuge during adverse conditions. These are the 2, 3 and 4 criteria that's come under conservation of biological diversity. Then we have another specific criteria based on water birds, that is criteria number 5 and criteria number 6. And what actually these criteria 5 and 6 actually says, it says a wetland should be considered as a wetland of international importance if it regularly supports 20,000 or more water birds. Then we can consider that as declared as that particular wetlands as wetland of international importance. And then criteria 6 is a wetland should be considered internationally important if actually it regularly supports 1% of the individual in a population of one species or subspecies of the water birds. This is the criteria 6 based on water birds. Then we have a criteria number 7, a wetland should be considered internationally important if actually supports a significant portion of the indigenous fish subspecies, species or families. This criteria is actually based on the fishes that are actually representative of wetland benefits or values and thereby contributes to the global biological diversity. And criteria 8 is a wetland is considered as a wetland of international importance if it is an important source of food for fishes, spawning grounds, nursery, or migration paths on which the fish stock either within the wetlands or elsewhere. So, this criteria number 7 and the criteria number 8 is based on fishes. Then we have a last criteria, it is based on the other taxa. Although we have a different, within 9 criteria there are different things, and the last one, the criteria to be considered a wetland of international importance is based on the other taxa, that is criteria number 9. A wetland should be considered as a wetland of international importance if it regularly supports 1% of the individuals in a population of one species or subspecies of the wetlands dependent non-avian animal species. If they have, if 1% of that particular individuals in a population of one species or subspecies of wetland dependent non-avian animal species, then we can also consider that particular wetland as wetland of international importance according to the guidelines of Convention on Wetland of International Importance or Ramsar Convention. Then another sites of conservation importance is Project Snow Leopard, which actually launched in 2009. The project actually focused on the conservation of high altitude wildlife, particularly the endangered snow leopards. Union Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change released the report on the status of the snow leopard in India recently. And we can say this is the first ever reports or scientific report exercise a reporting of the population of the snow leopards. They have actually find that there are about 718 snow leopards in India. This snow leopard population assessment in India is actually systematically covered 17% of the potential snow leopard range in the country, involving forest and wildlife staffs, researchers, volunteers and contributors from the knowledge partners. And they covered approximately 1,20,000 of crucial snow leopard habitat across the Trans-Himalayan regions, including UTs of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir and states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim. And this exercise of snow leopard population assessments was conducted from 2019 to 2023. And from this report, it is evident that India has made a significant steps in snow leopard conservations. And what they actually find that with approximately 34% of the habitat under legal protections and over 35,000 square miles designated for landscape conservations, that out of the area they covered for the snow leopard habitat, only 34% is under legal protection. And for the other areas, we need a landscape approach for the conservation of the snow leopard habitats. And there is a strong, we can say, foundation in place according to these reports that India has now moved towards participatory landscape-based conservation projects after they realized that the limitation of the exclusive protected areas and capacity restrictions, because it's not like that we can declare each and every area as a protected area. So we need a landscape approach where both humans and the wildlife can live in coexistence. And we can say this shift is critical since about 70% of the land used by the snow leopard is unprotected and provides critical habitat for the wildlife, not for the, we can say, snow leopard, but also for the wildlife. This project Project Snow Leopard have been instrumental in the shift, collectively covering actually close to half of the Indian snow leopard range. This represent we can say a noteworthy transition from the exclusive focus on the protected areas to collaborative landscape management over the past few decades. The report also released by the ministry highlights some key things that are essential for the snow leopard conservations, because as a significant portion of the snow leopard habitats borders neighboring countries such as Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan and China, and it is patrolled by the Indian security forces. These border forces become a vital stakeholders for this snow leopard conservation. So it is essential to provide proper training and sensitization programs for the conservation needs and engage them through focused program to raise awareness and foster long-term cooperation for the conservation of the critical snow leopard habitats. This report also highlights that landscape level management planning and coordination are essential for effective implementation and the managements in order to, we can say, identify biologically significant landscape. A landscape level strategy is required. Creating, we can say, scientifically informed, collaborative, landscape based management plans is also essential to these conservation efforts. So main crux is that we need, if we really want to conserve the snow leopard, we need a landscape approach for the conservation of snow leopards. And let's find out, although we have discussed a number of the things regarding the protected areas in India and the world, and we also discussed the site of the conservation importance. Let's discuss some of the challenges that will be faced by the Indian protected areas or site of the conservation importance. So first is the human-wildlife conflict. As human population, we already know, is invading upon wildlife habitats. Conflict arises particularly with large mammals like tiger, leopard and elephants, and these species often, we can say, wander into the agricultural fields or villages, causing economic losses and threatening human lives. So managing this conflict requires innovative solutions such as community engagements, technological interventions like early warning systems and etc. We will discuss this human wildlife conflict in detail in the coming lectures also. Then another things that the challenge faced by the protected area is habitat fragmentation. Rapid urbanization, we can say, infrastructure projects like roads, dams, agricultural expansions have led to the fragmentation of the habitats. This isolation of the wildlife can lead to inbreeding and also reduce the genetic diversity, threatening species long-term survival. And other is wildlife corridors are, we can say, a critical solutions to, to implement these things face a large number of the challenges, because the corridors are very important to connect one population to another populations. And here the roles of the, we can say, conservation reserves is also very important. That's why the a new categories in the protected area of India has been implemented, that the conservation reserves are declared in those areas which actually connect one protected areas to another protected area, one national parks to the wildlife sanctuaries, or one tiger reserves to the other tiger reserves, so the genetic diversity is actually maintained. Then another is poaching and illegal trade. We can say, despite strict laws and poaching of endangered species like tiger, rhinoceros and elephants and for their body parts remains a significant threat nowadays. India is also, although India is a part of international efforts to curb wildlife crime, including CITES, Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, and Interpol wildlife networks, but there is also more things needed to curb this poaching and illegal wildlife trades. It needs international cooperations and number of the other things. By only we can actually control this poaching and illegal wildlife trade. Another is climate change. Nowadays everyone is talking about this. Rising temperatures, changing rainfall patterns and extreme weather events impacts Indian ecosystems. For example, let's take the example of the mangrove forests in Sundarbans are threatened by the rising sea levels. This is the crisis that we are facing nowadays. And another example that I will give you here, the Himalayan species like the snow leopards are affected by the shrinking snow lines and changing prey populations. And there are a number of the, we can say, bird species in the Himalayas whose range are also actually restricted due to these shrinking habitats in the Himalayas. And let's try to find out some of the things regarding the solution. Is one is the community involvement and the conservations, how we can say involve the community in the conservations. So historically, if we find out, India's indigenous communities have coexisted with wildlife, and their involvement is essentially for sustainable conservations. Various, we can say, initiatives including the Forest Right Act of 2006 aim to actually balance the conservation goals with the rights of the local communities. And recently, Government of India has implemented or passed several laws regarding the rights of the local peoples, so they can directly involve in the conservations of the wildlife and their habitats. And there is also projects like joint forest management, community reserves, that actually involve the local communities in managing forest resources and the biodiversity, because these local peoples are actually the stakeholders for the biodiversity conservation. If they are not involved in these conservation projects, then it is not possible to conserve any critical habitats. Let's take the example of some of the protected areas in which local communities play a very important role for their conservation. These are prior tiger reserves, in which actually local communities are involved in ecotourisms and that actually reducing the dependence on the forest resources. We can there are number of the other protected areas also who are actually doing the same. The Carber Tiger Reserve is also one example. The Dudwa Tiger Reserve is also one example in which tourism has been promoted, so the local peoples actually reduces their dependence on the forest resources or the forest products. Another is Chilka Lake. It is a Ramsar sites, because we have discussed the Ramsar sites in the previous slides, where the actually government works with the local fisheries to manage fish stocks and conserve the migratory birds. So these are some of the examples in which how we can actually involve the locals communities in the conservation initiatives. We can say the main issues concerning to the management of the protected areas in India is currently facing a complex challenge that are, we can say, both ecological and as well as social in natures. We can say issues such as habitat loss, fragmentations, overuse of the biomass resources in the context of the biotic pressures. We can say increasing human wildlife conflicts, livelihood dependence on forest and wildlife resources, poaching and illegal wildlife trade in wildlife pods, and products need for maintaining a broad base of public support for wildlife conservation. All these things are not possible without the involvement of the local people. So we need to involve the local people in the conservation initiatives, otherwise we will not control all these things. The government and the civil society are taking several steps in this way to address these issues. What we can say at this time, that improved collaboration and better coordinations among the wider area of the stockholders are needed at this stage to meet the challenge of conserving India's diverse wilderness resources. Otherwise, it is not possible to conserve. With this, we end today's lectures, and in the next lecture, we will discuss some other important topics of biodiversity conservation. Thank you, dear students.